We are so grateful for technology, but no matter how much you do the rehearsals and you try to have it right, it always just throws in one of those curveballs on you. But again, like I said, I just want to welcome everyone and happy Africa Month. My name is Tshegofatso Motaung. I'm the founding director of Cedarleb Africa, which is established to connect, to simplify doing business in Africa and with Africa. So whether you are in Africa or abroad, we'd like to work with you. We all know the story of Africa. Africa is a rich continent, yet we find that there are many challenges. And one of the challenges is that Africans are not trading and doing business with each other. As a result, we pay more and we don't benefit as much from the very wealth that we have. Current levels of intra-Africa trade are below 20%. And, you know, depending on which country, you know, the more you drill down, it goes down to as low as 12%. So we believe that in order to turn the tide, all of us have a role to play, irrespective of how big or how small, and that in the same way that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, we believe that all our efforts combined and coordinated together are able to make a big contribution to changing the current landscape. So today we welcome you to our first webinar, online meeting coming. We have people that are joining us from South Africa, Botswana, from Accra, and it's a beginning of a journey, a first step in a journey of unlocking Africa's prosperity, but bringing it home to just me and you, because these meetings are currently taking place in big boardrooms, but we're just so grateful that we've managed to have this space where we can bring together entrepreneurs. And I just want to welcome and just express my gratitude to the Africa Prosperity Network leadership. I am so grateful. Welcoming Dr. Dlamini Zuma, our mother, and the chairperson of the Advisory Council of the Africa Prosperity Network, and the CEO, Sidiq Altum. Grateful for just how you all just listened and believed and agreed. This platform, this webinar is just one of those examples that demonstrate that it takes small efforts and they come together to start something new. And also to Dumi Lopang, the Group Executive Director of YMH Media Group, which has media business in Botswana, in Zambia. Dumi has an amazing story of entrepreneurship and is very passionate about contributing to making this continent successful, you know, as an entrepreneur. So today is that conversation we are beginning, and we just want to welcome you. We had a lot of people who have RSVP'd. I'm not sure if they've all made it yet. Some leaders of government officials that are doing trade, and we just want to trade promotion agencies that had confirmed, business leaders, traditional leaders that also confirmed. And we know that the beauty of having virtual meetings is even those who missed it live will be able to then connect with us later. But I think more than anything, we just want to welcome the people who make it happen, the entrepreneurs, the small businesses, and those that are still dreaming about beginning their journey. To start off our meeting, we managed to do a little bit of a poll, I think, just to help us. I'm just going to launch a question, and if you can quickly respond, we just want to get a sense of, how we think about what is happening. We're just going to run it for 30 seconds. Do you believe entrepreneurs and SMMEs can contribute to Africa's prosperity? Please tell me what you think. Do you think they can? Maybe. No, this is just a talk. No, maybe if they are lucky or they are connected. I'm going to give it another 5 seconds. If you have not indicated, maybe you just listening, we want your participation. Do you believe entrepreneurs and SMMEs can contribute? Okay, let's end the poll and see how Africans feel about this matter. I'm glad to share the results that 94% of the people who have joined so far believe that there is hope. Okay, let's go to the next question that we want to just get your thoughts about. Okay, so we've shared those results and we go back. Okay, second question. You must be ready to vote in the next 30 seconds. Do you know about Agenda 2063? Yes, I know. I fully understand. Sort of, I've heard in the news, but I don't know what it is. Never. This is my first time I'm hearing about Agenda 2063. Okay, I must launch this. That is the question. There we go. Look, so you can vote. So let's see how we are doing in this. Okay. We have 5 more seconds and okay, I will end the poll now. Okay, so let's share the results. Question number 2, we have 31% that understand it fully, about 27% that have heard it in the news, and 42%. Mama Zuma, I don't know how you feel about this question. After all these years, 42% of the people in this room are saying that they have never heard of Agenda 2063. Okay, and so we're going to the next question. Sure, we'll launch it. The last question is, did you know about the AFCFTA? Do you know about the AFCFTA? Yes. What is that? You're shocked. What are you talking about? Is that a person? Is that a... And then some say, yes, I've heard about it. I don't know. I know about it and I've been following from the development since it was launched. And some of you, if you are shocked, don't be. There's no right or wrong. I won't even know how you voted. So that is the beauty of it. Just let us know. Okay, ending the poll. Have you all? 66% of the people have participated. So some people are not voting. Try to vote, and I'm ending the poll now. Okay, then we share the results. Yeah, what is that? Some people are shocked. What is that? I hope, I know we've got the FCFTA team. There's work to be done there. Yes, I've heard about it. I don't know what it's about. And there's 38% of people that have heard about it and they've been following from the time that it was launched. The last question before we start, do you believe that there is enough awareness in your community, in your country, your circles of friends about the FCATA? Okay, let's launch that question. Okay, where is it now? Technology, participate with me. Okay. Okay, my question is not coming. Okay, I think let's move on. We've gotten a bit of a picture, you know, that with all the work that has happened. Okay, so excuse me, okay. So with all the work that has happened, it's clear that there's still a lot of work to be done in raising awareness. Just in our room here, we've seen just how we are not where we need to be. And I think with that, I will want to welcome you, Dr. Dlamini Zuma. You know, I was trying to think of how to introduce you. And I'm like, oh, you know, you've lived a life of such, I mean, courage. You've done so many things. You've led, and we are so grateful to have you with us. And I'm grateful that, you know, when you agreed, I've been thinking, wow, I was amazed at your reception and how much you were behind the networking. And I think it's good to see this kind of leadership. I was thinking about one of the things that stands out from my end about you. I remember when you were the Minister of Health, I was just a graduate, and I used to work in this office where the people would smoke. And I struggled. And when Dr. Dlamini Zuma came in and stopped smoking, I was so grateful. I was so grateful. And when I went to other countries, I discovered that the leadership around that area, around that topic was, you know, had not been so strong. And before you knew it, in South Africa, we all stopped. There was no smoking indoors. I mean, the guys would come in the office and they would smoke, and they will tell me to go out or open the windows. And you can imagine in winter. So I think for me, that is one of the things you did that touched me very personally, because I remember thinking, I'm going to come out of this place with asthma. And I mean, you've done a lot. And I think, you know, I don't even want to go into that list of what you've done, because we don't need to introduce you. But I just want to welcome you and to say we really honor the gift you've been from not just in South Africa, but in the continent. And I think when I go outside South Africa, seeing how much the rest of the continent loves you and respects you and honors you, I feel that we have a lot of work to do, maybe to just acknowledge the contribution you've made. And with that, I just want to welcome you and ask that you just speak to us. We could be here just listening to you alone because there's so much to say on your end. Over to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Do you want to make my input now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but I'm a bit confused on what to say now, having heard that the majority of people here don't know about Agenda 2063. So I don't know whether I should say a bit more about it than I intended to. But let me say good afternoon and good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to actually be in this meeting, in this webinar, where there are distinguished participants, entrepreneurs, and partners. And I hope that this is not the first and it will not be the last. And of course, our theme is very interesting. The theme of how Africa's entrepreneurs and small business can unlock our continent's prosperity. And this is very important because we have, as we say, a paradox where we have a rich Africa, but poor Africans. So we want Africans to be prosperous. And when we talk about continent's prosperity, we're actually talking about the prosperity of the people. Because we would like to have a united, prosperous continent. And the prosperity and the development should be driven by its people. And we should play a dynamic role in the global arena. So, as I've had the opportunity to witness entrepreneurs, enterprises at a very grassroots level in communities, but I've also experienced it at a continental level and at a global level. I want to say that I'm convinced that our collective future hinges on empowering those who dare to innovate, to create, to solve problems, and most of them are our entrepreneurs. But let me say a bit about Agenda 2063. Agenda 2063.
Maybe, Mama, are you able to perhaps open your video if we can see you? That would be great if it's possible.
I'm trying to open it. You can open it as a host. Let me see. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you now.
Okay. So I wanted to just say something about Agenda 2063 because this is the basis on which we want to build the Africa we want, the prosperous Africa that we want. Just a bit of background. Agenda 2063 was actually, in a way, inspired by our forebearers, our Pan-Africanists, who were meeting several times as Pan-Africanists from the diaspora, from the continent. And what inspired us was that in 1945 in Manchester, they met. And one of the decisions they took there was that Africa should be decolonized within 50 years. And that gave them a long-term objective to work towards. And that's when they worked hard to get countries decolonized. And when some of them were, they then started the OAU, which was started in 1963. Of course, the women started first, let me say, with a Pan-African Women's Organization's POW, which was launched a year before the Organization of African Unity. But then they put structures in place, liberation committees and so on, supported countries that were still struggling. And indeed, Africa was, other than Western Sahara, Africa was decolonized within 50 years. And South Africa was decolonized on the 49th year. So we then, when we were celebrating the 50 years of the formation of the Organization of African Unity, we said we were celebrating the decolonization of Africa and other things that this organization, now the African Union, has put in place. But what will we be celebrating in the next 50 years? So that's what inspired us to put a plan, to say this is the plan that we must work towards, so that when we come back to celebrate the centenary, we can say, yes, now we have a prosperous Africa. Now we have an Africa that whose young people are skilled. Because one of the things, we have to invest in what we have. And our most precious resource is the people themselves. It's the people, especially young people and women who have been left behind. And that's why in Agenda 2063, we say there must be a skills revolution. So we must skill these young people so that they are able to participate meaningfully in the economy. Because these days you can't do anything without skills. And so we also said in Agenda 2063, we must use our culture, because our culture is rich. Our creative industry is very important and it can create lots of jobs. And the continental people are Africans are very creative. They've always been. And so this is one of the things. I'll just mention a few because I don't know how much time you are giving me. So the creative industry must be developed. We also said, of course, infrastructure, because you can't do much without infrastructure. If we're going to manufacture, which we must, industrialization cannot happen if we don't have the energy infrastructure, because energy is the lifeline of industry. But even if we manufacture, if we can't trade because we are not connected, we can't move people and goods across the continent, then we will not succeed. So infrastructure that connects all of us by road, by rail, by air, by sea, ICT, we must be connected. That's part of what Agenda 2063 says. It also says we need to look at the ocean. The ocean is a huge economic space, which we have not really tapped. We have 3 oceans and 2 seas: the Atlantic, the Indian, the Antarctica, the Red Sea, the Mediterranean. But if you were to just fly over these seas, you'll find lots of activity, but none of it is by us. You may find lots of vessels on the high seas coming to Africa or leaving Africa, but they are not ours. People inside there are not ours. The perishables there are not ours. What is ours is raw material in those vessels going to distant lands. So, and 90% of our imports and exports on the continent is carried through the maritime highways. So that's why Agenda 2063 says we must look at the ocean's economy. Of course, technology is also very important, because as technology advances, we must not be left behind. It also says that this must we must make sure that women and youth are part of driving the continent's economy and prosperity. Also says that you can't be a continent that can't feed itself. 60% of available arable land globally is on our continent. But why are we spending billions importing food? So Agenda 2063 says we must grow what we must consume what we produce and produce what we consume. So we must grow food, feed ourselves, and even help feed the world. Agenda 2063 also says we must stop exporting raw materials. We must process agro-processing is important. Manufacturing, beneficiating our minerals and our natural resources. When we grow cotton, why do we send it out and then buy cloth? We must produce it here on our continent. Because by doing that, you are selling cheap and buying expensive. We are exporting jobs and revenue. So we must do that here. We must produce furniture here. We must produce everything, even computers, cell phones, we can produce them here. Batteries for electric cars, you name it, we produce here. We can produce here. Because there are no minerals that are needed in the world for economic development and technology that we do not have. Okay, but also Agenda 2063 says we must trade amongst ourselves. Trade within Africa is very low, less than 20%. But if you ask any other person from a different continent and say, who's your biggest trading partner? They will name somebody in the region. We are the only ones who will name people across the oceans as our biggest trading partners. So we must trade. That's why there's the Africa Continental Free Trade, which is the biggest in the world, because it's 1.4 billion plus people. So it's a huge market. And if we trade amongst ourselves, it means if you are a business person, let's say you live in South Africa. If you think South Africa, you are talking 60 plus million people. But if you're saying, I want to trade in the continent, our continent, then you're talking about a market of 1.4 billion people. So it doesn't make sense what we are doing now, trading amongst ourselves and not trading amongst ourselves as a continent, but only trading with other continents. So Agenda 2063 says we must make sure we can do that. But the Africa Continental Free Trade, therefore, needs to dismantle or move barriers, move tariffs, but not only tariffs, non-tariff barriers, because there are lots of non-tariff barriers that still need to be removed. So that somebody sitting in Ghana, in Burkina, in Kenya, designing, for instance, can be able to connect with retailers in other countries in a seamless fashion, or small business who want cross-border traders should be able to cross the borders easy. If you are moving animals from one place to the other, you should make sure that at the border, the veterinary services and everything is there. You can move your animals. So that's what Agenda 2063 in a nutshell is about. And that's why the Africa Continental Free Trade is one of the flagship of our flagships, because without trade, then what is the how can we create that prosperity? So I won't go into further details, but we also hopefully one day we can take a train from Ghana to Kenya, high speed. That's what Agenda 2063 is about. But let me move on to say a bit more about the Africa Continental Free Trade. The Africa Continental Free Trade really is very important, because it will be, the trade will be borderless in a way. So you'll have a market of 1.4 billion people. The tariffs will be reduced, if not removed, and the processes of trading would be seamless. And the opportunities within the continent are huge. And local businesses can also scale up into regional value chains. Imagine a Ghanaian shea butter producer supplying cosmetic factories across the continent. And I can mention many other products, but I just want to use that only as an example. Or a tech startup in Nairobi partnering with fintech hubs in Johannesburg. And this is the promise of the Africa Continental Free Trade, turning small and medium businesses eventually into continental champions. Because the small and medium enterprises are the ones actually that create jobs more than anybody else. They are the ones who will reduce inequality. And of course, they can be in any area. On our continent, as I've said, agribusiness is very important. We have everything that it takes to use it and to process what we produce. And technology, young people are very good at technology. And so let's get that going. But we also know that, for instance, if we look at the time of Ebola or COVID, there were lots of problems with trade. And Africa felt it most because most of our trade comes from outside. So when there were restrictions, we suffered most. Whereas if we were probably trading more amongst ourselves, we would have suffered, but not as much as we did. And we ended up with rising debts, and we ended up with unemployment because a lot of people lost their jobs and so on. But if we were having small and medium enterprises more on our continent, we wouldn't have suffered as much as we did. If we were to give 10% of the 700 billion of Africa sovereign wealth funds to SMMEs, can you imagine how that will unlock our economies, how that will unleash a wave of innovation, employment, and so on. So, and also, I think we must also look at making sure that small and medium enterprises, especially those of women and young people, have access to finance. Because I'm not excluding men. Men already have access to finance to some extent. But women and young people are having problems accessing finance. And I think that's one of the things that we must look at. And if we were to do that, our GDP will rise, our economies will improve and will be more resilient, and we will have prosperity. It will unlock a lot of revenue as well. And also, I think we should look at the telcos. We must find a way of reducing the data cost, right? Because SMMEs spend a lot of money buying data, but also roaming fees. We must either reduce them or do away with them. In East Africa, they did away with roaming fees, and they found that the telcos did not lose revenue. Instead, there was a bigger traffic and people were calling more, and so they were making more money from the direct calls, not from the roaming fees. Because for SMMEs, it's also difficult when they have to pay a lot of money in roaming fees. I just want to spend a bit of time on Africa, on Africa's creative the designers. Why don't we, most of us, wear African clothes? They're so beautiful. Clothes that are made on our continent. They are beautiful. They suit our weather conditions, and they can be a gold mine for the designers and for the people who make the clothes. You know, sometimes people ask me, like when I was in Burkina, say, "Oh, where do you get these clothes?" I said, "I got them from Burkina." "Oh, they are so nice." I wish we could just have a way of assisting and making sure that those designers and those clothes are spread all over the continent. And also, we must ensure that we protect, we register the patents, because it's easy to then copy and make fake clothes that look similar. So I think we need to make sure that we do actually patent everything that we do from the continent. So let me not take too much of your time. As I say, I don't know how much time I was given, but I want to say that this must be a call for action for the entrepreneurs in our continent, not only those who are on the platform, but generally all our entrepreneurs, because they must be the architects of Africa's prosperity. And you must feel free as entrepreneurs to give ideas to governments, to everyone about how, for instance, what policies you need changed so that you can be in an ecosystem that is comfortable and that is encouraging you to grow rather than staying in creating bottlenecks. You must you must feel free to speak, and your voice matters. You must know that and use it, because your growth means the growth of the economy. It means jobs. It means eventually a prosperous continent. We must also encourage young people. For instance, we launched a volunteer call for young Africans. And I think that must also be something that we encourage. And volunteering does not only mean people who are not working. You could be working, but weekends you could be volunteering to do something to help building schools, clinics, helping people in the villages. So we should participate not only in our individual development, but in assisting others to develop who need that. So I think we should also inculcate in our minds that Africa will only be developed by us Africans and persons in the diaspora. Nobody will come and develop our continent. I can say that without fear of contradiction. No continent has been developed by another continent. We cry for investors, but the investors are not here to develop our continent. They are not here to eradicate poverty. They are not here to ensure that our young people are skilled, people are healthy, people have food security. They are here to make a profit. And that's by definition, if you invest, you want a return on your investment. So I'm not saying chase them away, but I'm just saying we must understand that it's us who will develop this continent. It's us who will make this continent prosperous. And it's us who will unite this continent. We must encourage unity rather than divisions. I know it's difficult because of these borders that we now hold on to as though they were drawn by our forebears or our ancestors. They were not. So there's no need to hold on to those borders at all. But let me stop there for now. But we must build the Africa we want. And it's not an impossible dream. It's within our reach if we really put our minds to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dlamini Zuma. Thank you so much. I think I was actually saying to someone that even this webinar, to me, it's one of those examples, like you say, as a small business, an entrepreneur with an idea, me sharing with yourselves at the Africa Prosperity Network and just receiving it. This, for me, it's an encouragement. And we are just beginning really to say, let's begin as SMMEs and understand this is our home, and some of us don't have passports to other places. We have nowhere to run to. And just beginning to take that responsibility that we need to dream to see the change that we wish to see in our continent. So thank you so much. We just needed that to start us off. I'm going to invite, I know that Dumi has a very tight schedule. But as you were saying, this is a launch of a series of conversations. So we will, if we get not enough time, I'm going to ask you, especially next month when we focus a bit around youth, that maybe we can have you again. I'm going to invite Sidiq to come on just to tell us about the Africa Prosperity Network, and we'll then invite Dumi as an example of entrepreneurs that have pushed, and are doing great things. Over to you, Sidiq.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, the chairperson of the Advisory Council of Africa Prosperity Network, Dr. Nkuzana Dlamini Zuma. We call Mama Zuma the mother of all African. I think you've said it all. I think you've pointed everything that important. But let me, before I start to talk about what they asked me to say, I want to reflect more and stress a very important thing that Mama Zuma has stopped her words in. It's about the borders. Borders were not made by us Africans. They were made by the colonial powers. We were not even part of deciding those borders. We were trained, we were educated, we were even made to guard those borders with our life. And that's the irony, that's the misery also of the thing, that the borders that we haven't been part of drawing, our ancestors, our fathers, they were not made by us, but they were made by those people who were colonizing us, they were enslaving us. And yet our armies, our officials are trained to guard them with the life of the Africans against Africans themselves. So this is one of the things. So, and we need to say that there is more in removing those barriers, removing those borders for us Africans, and there is profit for there. There's money, there is investment, there is opportunities, there is a new life for all Africa in adopting the free trade modality, and in enabling the SMMEs to trade and to live in a one single African market. Our valued strategic partners, our industrious entrepreneurs, friends of Africa, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. As we explore the most critical drivers of our continent future, we look at the transformative power of entrepreneurs and small and micro enterprises. Let me begin expressing a sincere gratitude to Shaigo here and the entire Cedarleb Africa team for their partnership, for this opportunity in convening this important webinar. As said, dialogue like this are not just a discussion. They are an incubator of ideas, catalyst for action, and bridges between policy and practice. And here, that's what we want to take out and take from this discussion. Across Africa, entrepreneurs, SMMEs, from the core of our economies, according to the International Labour Organization, the ILO, and the African Development Bank, they constitute more than 90% of all businesses on the continent and contribute approximately 80% of the employment in many African nations. Economic powerhouses like Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, SMMEs generate over 70% of the GDP. These figures are not just statistics. They represent millions of dreams, livelihoods, and innovation that sustain communities and fuel progress. For blasting informal market of Lagos to the tech hubs of Nairobi, as Mama Zuma's mentioned, and the agribusiness of Rwanda, African entrepreneurs are solving local challenges with homegrown solutions. They are not only creating jobs, but also fostering social cohesion, reducing inequalities, and building wealth where it matters most, within their communities. Recent data from the African Development Bank revealed that small and medium enterprises constitute approximately 90% of all businesses across the continent, while generating nearly 80% of the employment opportunities. In practical terms, this translates to some 40 million micro businesses in Nigeria. Providing livelihoods for almost 76% of their workforce. While Kenyan SMEs create 83% of new jobs annually, these are not abstract statistics, but rather the living embodiment of the Africa's entrepreneurial spirit. From the women processing shea butter in Tamale to the young innovator develops mobile payment solution in Kigali and across the border trading, linking regional markets from Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Yet the infrastructure is a challenge. I think the infrastructure is a serious challenge, where all the infrastructure in Africa were made to loot the resources, to drain the Africa wealth to outside of the continent without us benefiting from that. What we need to do is to look more as what we've reached in our own dialogues in Africa Prosperity Networks. That's the need for proper infrastructure, for an infrastructure enables trade within Africa and enables that the free movement of people and goods. Yet, however, for all this remarkable potential, significant barriers persist. World Bank reports that around 18% of African SMEs can access formal credit facilities, despite contributing to nearly 40% of the GDP in several key economies. The African trade remains stubbornly low at just 14% of the total commerce, a fraction of Europe's 60%. While cross-border transactions continue to carry prohibitive cost, averaging 9%, these constraints disproportionately affect three critical demographic groups that must form the backbone of our continental single market: women entrepreneurs, who are nearly a third registered business yet face persistent barrier to finance; our dynamic youth population, who drives innovation but lacks institutional support; and the small enterprises that struggle to scale beyond national borders. As a Pan-African platform, Africa Prosperity Network is committed to accelerating the African continental free trade area, and fostering inclusive, sustainable growth. Our mission is rooted in simple but powerful belief that Africa must be the architect of Africa's prosperity. To achieve this, we are building ecosystems that bring together business leader, policymaker, academics, civil society, and the diaspora, because collaboration is not isolation. Collaboration, not isolation, will unlock our continent potential. One of our flagship initiative, the Africa Prosperity Dialogue, simplifies the approach. Each year, we convene the leaders from across sectors to craft actionable strategies for economic integration, with entrepreneurship and SMEs development at the heart of this conversation. The next Africa Prosperity Dialogue will focus on empowering women. SMEs are used to build Africa's single market. When we convene this in February 2026, we will measure our success not by resolution passed, but by tangible outcomes achieved. More women-owned enterprises trading across border, more youth-led startups scaling regionally, more small businesses accessing continental markets. For when the market women in Accra can effortlessly support her goods to customers in Nairobi, when young tech innovator in Lagos can seamlessly serve clients in Johannesburg, when the artisan in Bamako can digitally connect with buyers in Cairo, then we will know the true meaning of a continental integration, a borderless continent. The Africa we envision is not the one of aid dependency. It's not the one of aid dependency, but of trade and self-reliance, not of fragmentation, but of integration, not of untapped potential, but of a released prosperity. This is not a dream. This is not a dream. It is a decision within our grasp. A decision to invest in our people, empower our entrepreneurs, and build the continent that is connected, confident, and unstoppable. What Africa requires is a bold, concentrated action. I invite each of you here today to join us in this virtual webinar, not as observers, but committed partners in shaping Africa prosperity future. Please join us, join the thinking, join the discussion, and join the dialogue in February 2026. But even before that, all the platforms are open, and we still have the founder and the thinker of this vision, Mama Zuma, with us. Thank you again. Thanks for the opportunity, and I look forward to interact.
Thank you so much, Sidiq. I attended the Africa Prosperity Dialogue myself beginning of this year, and I came back very, very encouraged, and that's why we are here to mobilize from the South to help people to know that the continent is shifting. If you want to get a sense of what is happening in the continent, at just one go, development, the expertise, I really invite you that next year we go together. But even before that, we are planning to go to Accra in August. So please, let's stay connected, and we go together to Accra for a trade mission. Over to you, Dumi, and I know that you are pressed for time, but I'm grateful that we are beginning a series of conversations, and we will have you again, and I'm inviting you, Dumi, for the next one, because we want to focus next conversation also on youth, Youth Month, and you are rushing for your young people at the radio station. So over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Tsero, for the invitation. The African Prosperity Network, to Mama Dlamini Zuma, and to you, Sidiq Al-Toum, and everyone else who's on the platform. Good afternoon. You know, coming from Botswana with a population of 2.5 million people, you soon realize as an entrepreneur that the market is extremely small and limited, especially in terms of certain sectors. My primary sector that I'm involved in is in media and the creative arts. And after some time, and primarily we make our money from advertising revenue. And advertisers obviously spend more money looking at the return on investment in terms of every dollar that they spend on marketing, what type of investment, what type of return are they going to get in terms of sales? So when you have a market of 2.5 million people, and that includes babies, etc., you then realize that you get to a point of saturation very quickly. And for me, that was really the driving force behind wanting to look at the rest of the continent. And the first thing that I did was obviously to try and look in SADC, primarily because from a language perspective, say for Angola and Mozambique, from a language perspective, pretty much we're all English speaking. Culturally as well, you know, there's a lot of similarities, you know, we are Bantus, etc., you know. So my initial to Malawi, and how it happened was when we set up the first private radio station in Botswana. And at the time, there was a young man who was studying here. His mother was the UN representative to Botswana, but they were originally from Malawi. And when she finished her service here, they went back to Malawi and she became a member of parliament. And when they started licensing private radio stations, this young man told somebody who was interested in setting up a radio station to say, there's this amazing radio station in Botswana. You need to partner with these guys, you know. And they called me and I said, sure. And I flew up to go and investigate. Unfortunately, one of the biggest problems we found there was the gentleman who wanted to start the station was the private secretary to the president at the time. And there were a lot of laws around ownership, of foreign ownership, etc. And unfortunately, it meant that that wasn't a viable option. The next opportunity again, where somebody called, was from Zambia to say there's a station for sale here. I had told somebody in the mid-2000s that I've got this vision of expanding into the continent. And in 2012, he remembered this. And he called me. We flew up, looked at the opportunity, and the rest is history. Now, some of the challenges that you will find as you go into these new territories is around legislation. I mean, media is highly regulated. So there's a limit in terms of how much foreign ownership they usually allow. And if you're coming in as an investor, for you to feel that your investment is secure, generally you would want a controlling equity stake in that investment. But in the media space, that is quite a challenge. But I think there are always ways to work around that from a structuring perspective. And then the movement, you know, we talk about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. One of the biggest things, like we mentioned, is non-tariff barriers. just dealing with getting permits, whether it's work permits to bring in skilled people to come in and impart skills to the local employees before leaving, is usually such a tedious process. And then, we are within SADC, but within SADC, there's SACU. You then find that countries like Zambia are not part of SACU. So in terms of just the free movement of goods and the tariffs charged, if you want to bring in a vehicle into or equipment into Zambia because it's outside of SACU, it's a completely new challenge and brings in completely new costs that you wouldn't be accustomed to if you're primarily used to dealing, for example, in Botswana with a South Africa. But yeah, I think the opportunities in the continent are really vast. I've been to most African countries, except for Francophone Africa, where I'll be going for the first time to Cote d'Ivoire in August this year. But I've seen the countries that seem to be really doing well and are attracting a lot of investment. Places like Rwanda, I went there and I went to their investment, like their body that encourages foreign investment. And I went there. We didn't have a previous appointment. We went in, they were so helpful. There are no restrictions in terms of foreign ownership, etc. They just want you to partner with citizens where need be. And they've got an entire body, just like in Botswana, called the Botswana Investment Trade Center. And I think a lot of countries have that, who will genuinely go out of their way to be enablers to help you set up, get all the right paperwork, and make the process as smooth as possible. So whilst I think it's great that, we have the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and area, I think the political will to change a lot of these regulations that are barriers, I think there's still a lot that needs to be done. You have a lot of protectionism, in the agricultural space. We had an issue in Botswana where we were importing 95% of what we consume in Botswana from South Africa. And the government decided to encourage, from a food security perspective, to encourage farming through incentives, through funding, etc. And then started off gradually shutting out imports from South Africa to encourage and incubate the local farming sector. That created a big problem with the South African government. But at the same time, you could understand from a food security perspective, where we were 95% of what we were consuming was coming from outside. So now, how do you balance that, where you have that sort of that protectionism that is needed to try and sort of grow the industry, but at the same time, you're trying to open up the borders to allow free trade of people and goods. So yeah, I think there's a lot that needs to be done on the ground practically. I think the political will, the political will is tricky because, like I said, when the new government came in Botswana, they immediately lifted the import ban. And South Africa was obviously happy. South African farmers, especially in the provinces that are adjacent to Botswana, were very happy. But the locals were very unhappy because a lot of them had gotten loans, etc., understanding that the market is protected. So politically, I don't know for the new government whether that is going to be an issue or not. So I think, yeah, I'm very excited about the opportunities that this free trade agreement opens up. And I really hope that politically on the ground, we will see actual changes done to legislation that are barrier. And corruption is a big problem in the continent. Everywhere where you try and bring in equipment or you try and get a license, anything that is regulated, unfortunately, it means that this ugly serpent called corruption always rears its head. So there's multifaceted things that need to be done, which will really make all of this stuff work. But as long as some of those things are there, we will have these wonderful agreements on paper. And I think this is a disease in most African countries that I've seen. We've got wonderful policies the implementation of these policies is normally the problem. You won't believe that I think in 1991, Singapore came to Botswana to come and study our whole e-governance model and how we were going to take the country forward using e-governance. 20 years later, we sent a delegation to Singapore to benchmark from them on e-gov. And they said, but we got the template from you guys in 1991. So the ideas, the policies are great, but for whatever reason, the implementation is poor. So I think for this to work out, for it to really be able to sort of lead to the sort of intra-African trade that we all envisage and would like to see, because like Mama Zuma said, what is currently happening with the tariffs in the US, whilst painful, I believe is a blessing. Africa needs to stand up and understand that when Americans vote, they vote for themselves. They put in a president who wants to put them first, not Africa, not Asia, not anywhere else. And we need to make sure that our leaders, our political leaders, are putting in place the structures to make sure that we as Africans want to make and create a future for ourselves instead of relying and hoping for a big brother to come from somewhere and save us. And I think this is the time that we must really look at intra-African trade. How do we make sure that nothing leaves the continent without beneficiation? Ethiopia has got a good example of that, where with their leather industry, they started off sending off hides. And then over the years, they introduced duties that if you take out raw hides, they slap you with like 100% duty to export raw hides. But the more you add value and beneficiate, the duties are reduced. So it is possible, you know, as long as there's that political will to make sure that all of this then actualizes and makes sense. Thanks, Cyril.
Thank you so much, Dumi, and also, you know, it helps that you've already walked this path even before, you know, some of the policies are implemented, and I believe that, you know, your voice will become very, very helpful as we navigate, because you've already gone ahead. Mama Zuma, I just want to ask a question maybe to you. How do we deal with this issue? I mean, you've been in politics, but your passion, we know that when it comes to this, you believe it, and that's why you're here. How do we deal with this political will that is an issue of seeing the implementation of these great policies? What can be changed? What can be done to just see things happen? And I, in the different roles you've had, there's been such practical things that happened that impacted people, and I think that's what we would like to see. One of the reasons we don't hear about the FCFTA is that whilst the AU, you did such an amazing work, and the people in Ethiopia loved the work you did, and then when you come home, you find that the awareness levels are not where they should be around the work. Over to you.
Yes, it's a difficult question, but I think if, say, if you're in government and you're a minister, you must take the lead on what needs to be done and be ready to, for instance, if you talked about the tobacco thing, there was a lot of flag, but you must be ready. You know, in my village, they say you are not money, so you can't be loved by everyone all the time. So you must understand that you then, if as a minister you don't lead, the officials are not likely to want to implement something if you as a minister are not leading. So I think our ministers, our of, our DGs, our whoever is responsible, starting with the executive before you go to the administration. Agenda 2063, for instance, would not have happened if we from the chairperson's office didn't lead it. Because there wasn't, we were informed that we are supposed to just do a 4-year strategic plan. And there was a lot of resistance to the Agenda 2063 until what unlocked the door was the letter to Kwame. Then that letter gave them, I think, an idea of what is possible if we have a long-term plan. So I think somebody talked about the political will. If there is no political will, nothing will happen. Besides the will, you must also be ready to be fought on many things, because what may be good, other people may see it as bad. Just like you saw the non-smoking in public as good, but I was fought vigorously during that time. But you must also know that if people fight you, but you know what you are doing is going to benefit people, you stand your ground. But not many people are willing to stand their ground if the media is fighting them, for instance. But the media will fight you. Some of the people, like the tobacco companies, fought us, but it didn't matter because we were convinced that what we were doing was going to benefit the people in the country. So, now, but also the citizens themselves must be part. We say the people shall govern. The people themselves, if the people are quiet, things won't be implemented. When they were fighting this tobacco thing, they even said to cabinet, they talked to the police, and the police said, we can't have a law that is unenforceable because police can't enforce this law, so it can't be passed. And I said the citizens will enforce it. It doesn't need police. And indeed, the citizens were able to enforce it because we had spoken, we had done public education about dangers of smoking, including passive smoking. So the public, even today, it's the public that polices it. It's not. So we must also involve the public. I always feel bad, for instance, we have an AU passport, an African passport. But business people, small and big, always complain about the visas and all those things. But the reason why we launched that passport was to make movement within the continent easy. There was a decision, the passport was launched, the president of Rwanda and Chad, you can see the photos, them holding their passports. But that is supposed to be implemented by the countries because the AU does not have the population registers, so it can't issue the passports. So it was agreed that countries must issue those passports. It will say African passport at the top, and at the bottom it will say Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, just indicating where it was issued. But because the citizens are not also demanding it from the government, it's not happening. So it's the government, it's the officials, it's the executive, the ministers, but also the public. But we need to inform the public. That's why, for instance, I'm thinking in this phase of my life, I must have a foundation that promotes Agenda 2063 so that the public can understand what it is and know what they can demand. Because an African passport, I use it because the AU issues it as a former chair. And as chair, you have it, but former chair, you can have it also. But it can be so useful to business people, to students, to whoever needs to go around the continent. But without the citizens demanding it, it probably won't happen. So I don't know whether I'm answering your question, but
You have, Mama. Thank you so much. You know, I think because I've followed the work from that letter to Nkuruma, you know, because this is an area of my passion, and I find that level of awareness, even here at home. So this foundation that you are launching, it's way overdue. I think it's time that we begin to have that long-term plan that we will see and constantly measure. So we look forward to that launch, and it is something that I believe, even as you had, you know, you in that letter. You must just Google the letter to Nkuruma, if you've never heard about it. You know, where Dr. Dlamini Zuma was just sharing about how. Anyway, let me not tell you. You look at it, and then you will understand Agenda 2063, because I'm out of time. We're coming to the end of our meeting in about 5 minutes.
Can I say something? Africa Prosperity Network can also be very helpful. The meetings they are having in Ghana are great. If they could start having them also in other countries, the same meetings, but in other countries, it would raise the level of consciousness about the single market. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so excited because this is really a beginning of a journey. I'm so grateful that I came to Accra. I didn't know anyone but Mama Zuma. When I saw that you were the chairperson of the advisory council, there was comfort in my heart that I think I'll be fine if I go to this meeting. And I'm grateful that I went and I met this amazing network. And when I got there, I was amazed also by just how in Ghana, because the government of Ghana has embraced the Africa Agenda 2063, and almost everybody talks Africa free trade. And I just was amazed at that level of awareness that is there. So I came back to say, this is not just for corporates. And I like what you're talking about, that citizens must enforce it. I was one of those citizens that took seriously the rule that no smoking, and I enforced it because my minister had decreed it. And, you know, in 20 years, you think about the side effects of having been a passive smoker. So those are some of the practical things. But Sidiq, I just want to ask you maybe to give your thoughts. And I know, yeah, let me just allow you to speak as we come to the end. This is just a beginning.
Thank you. I don't have the luxury to unmute myself, so but I really enjoyed every word that has been said today, and I think it's there is real opportunities in all what we say, and I agree with Dr. Zuma that we will soon. I think in Africa Prosperity Network, We will soon convening a media event in Malabo. That's hopefully on the 13th of July on the sidelines of the African Union coordination meeting there. Yes, this is something important, and we will also have an event in partnership with the African Business Council in Egypt. We just did something together with in Algeria, and we will try to move more across the continent, and hopefully we'll have something there in Botswana with our new partner there. Let's be also practical to look at the small businesses owners. I think it's if you are a small business owner, ask yourself what other African countries could use my product. I think this is the key things. I think those are the key actions. Also, it's not always about the government and criticizing the policies or the thing. As I mentioned at the beginning, that it's all about the mindset that have been, and once that mindset has been challenged, contested with real facts. For example, Mama Zuma used the issue of data. I can say that when Rwanda has removed the visa, there has been a strong debate there for that. This is not good. The income will reduce for the immigration and whatever the tourism. They were complaining about it, but when they removed the visa barrier for Africans, and I think everything has changed. People saw how beautiful it could be, and how successful it should be, and how also profitable it's happening. So those changes are we need to look at from a different perspectives. And I will say also for the small business owner that people start always small, try shipping a neighboring country, one country, or bartering with the local distributor. All these things could help. I think there is examples we just saw in Algiers for small traders who are trying to move beyond the borders. I think what's next in our agenda is, as I mentioned, we are planning the dialogues in February 2026, and Africa Prosperity Dialogue will bring the leaders, will bring the businesses, and will bring the real game changer this time, the youth, the SMMEs, and the women, indeed, where we know that one out of three businesses in Africa are run by women. Yet they face more barrier to finance. So I think one of the key discussion thing is also going to be about how are these small businesses are going to access funds, accessing resources, and what could be done in those regards. So we're still on the thing, but we look forward to prepare for it, and let's prepare now for your voice to be heard in this business platform and in this kind of discussion. We want to see more of young people, indeed, women and SMMEs from the region that you're mentioning, Shaigu. I think this is something very important, and if we could bring them all, and we could bring more people to engage in the dialogue. We're still planning it here in Accra, but through the year we will have lots of events all across Africa. Thank you all, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who has participated. Like I said, we are beginning this journey. And this is part of our trade mission to Accra, Ghana. And the plan is that in August, we'll take a small delegation, just so that we begin to plan. And next year we can have a bigger team. And so if your economic development partners if your economic development partners and funders are open, we'd like to take them to Accra, because I think in the southern region, we probably have not fully embraced this idea of the single market, the AfCFTA, and also it is by design. Remember, South Africa was also disconnected from the continent. So there's still that work we need to do in our minds to remind ourselves that we don't live in another country or another continent that is separate from the continent of Africa. So there's that reality that we still have to deal with. And I think Dumi, because of the market in Botswana being small, you were forced to go outside. But I think in South Africa, being a big economy, and there's a sense with which we don't think we need to even move. So we need to constantly have these meetings and engagements in order to move forward. I think I'd like to stop here so that we try to keep to the time. We're 5 minutes over. And if there's any last words from you, Mama Zuma, and I'm going to kindly ask that if you have questions, that you rather send them to me, and we will see how we can respond. I will share the next date of our webinar as we prepare to go to Accra, because it takes that physical engaging and going to finally see ourselves from any of the panelists before I thank and ask and we close the meeting.
Thank you. I just want to plant something. The women and young people selling by the roadside, selling tomatoes, mangoes, and so on. Quite a lot of their produce rots and they lose it. And I think we need to look at how they can be helped to maybe have cold storage, which they can share, or even process their products instead of that, because there's huge losses because of that. I just want to plant that, and you can see how you can then develop and make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Last word, Sidiq and Dumi, if you're still available. Okay. Let's do this. Oh, sorry. My host, oh my word. Okay, there we go.
Yes.
You
Okay. I say that working alone is hard, but small businesses working together, they can really achieve more. And there's opportunities. There's lots of ideas to exchange. So platform like the Africa Prosperity Network connect these entrepreneurs across the borders. So we look forward to partner with, we look forward to work together with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We look forward to meeting in person in Ghana, hopefully soon. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you so much, Mama Zuma. We truly appreciate your selfless service. As I was going over your CV, you could have had such a wonderful, quiet life as a medical doctor, but your heart for the country, for the continent, pushed you. And we are grateful for your life, and we pray that you remain strong and that we will get more from that well of wisdom and knowledge and continue to plant these ideas so that we can do our part. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Until we meet again, and we will stay connected. One of the simplest things to support SMMEs, like, share, invite a friend. There are times where it's not just about money, but just do that support as well. So until we meet again, we look forward to seeing our continent prosper in our lifetime. Goodbye.